blueprints.
Oh, there we go. And here we are.
It's upside down.
It is. All right, blueprints of our very first building.
Oh, I remember
And
these.
this is just exactly how it turned
That's
out.
exactly how it turned out.
And I remember that we ordered 150 chairs, which took a lot of faith to fit 150 chairs in there, but we did it. And I remember talking to one of the other leaders, church leaders here in town, and they asked us, "Oh, you're building a building, how many people you can seat?" And I said, "Well, we ordered 150 chairs," and they sat back, chuckled, and said, "You will never, ever have 150 people coming to an evangelical Christian church in this area.
In this area.
That will never happen." But of course it did. So in this whole process, from the Alaskan to building the first building, God was doing a lot of things, and we referred to some of them in us and for the church. But I think a lot of it really culminated with, it was spoken to at least by a word by one of our leaders, one of our friends, Peter. And Peter was a very, very intelligent man. And I don't think it would be unsafe to say that he was kind of an absent-minded professor. So he was very heady. He was a little bit of an overthinker, very deep thinker, very philosophical. And he did give his life to Jesus, and that was wonderful. But he always, in a little way, struggled with the bringing together faith with all the knowledge that he had. And so I'm saying that because Peter was the last person in the world you would ever expect that he would come up to you and say, "Hey, Pastor, I was praying for you and God spoke to me."
Yeah.
I would never have expected that. But one day I was down at church. Peter came early with his family to church. And he slapped me on the shoulder and said, "Hey, Pastor, I was praying for you this week." I said, "Oh, great, thanks."
Yeah.
And he said, and he turned and stopped, pointed his finger at me, and I felt like God spoke to me. And my jaw dropped.
Yeah.
I thought, "You? Really? What did he?" And he said, "Tell the pastor that I have given you these years with your children as a reward. And when the children are grown, this ministry will flourish like you want it to." It was very exciting when we finally built our building and we were able to move in.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember everything was set up. We were all ready to go. And we were wondering how many people will come. Because when we were in the Alaskan, a really, really big Sunday would have been 55.
I was going to say it was under 100 for
well,
sure.
55.
Yeah.
60 maybe, if everybody brought their relatives. But 55 maybe. And so we had our very first service. And there were over 85 people there. More than we've ever had ever, which was a great attendance. And a really special event for one of those days was that service. The very first service, one of the ladies that came was Cheryl. And Cheryl really didn't have any churching background whatsoever. And she had met a friend who had come to church, and that friend invited her to church. And so Cheryl came once, and then next Sunday, she raised her hand, came forward to accept Jesus as her Savior.
I remember
and that was, and she has her own story, but it was life-changing for Cheryl.
Yeah.
And Cheryl then later, and still today, is a faithful part of our church. But Cheryl was one of the first. The building grew from, I don't think we ever had less than 80 people. And it went from there, and quickly, I remember the day we had more than 100.
Yeah.
And then pretty soon we were like almost full, and we realized, we're going to have to do 2 services.
Yeah, and I remember, I may have mentioned before, but that's when we started the early morning prayer. Mm-hmm. And I believe it was a little bit of a turning point for us spiritually as a church, and gave us a new vision, I think, for what the next phase of the ministry and the church was going to be.
It was a great season of church, and there were a lot of special people. It was a time of gathering.
Yeah.
We mentioned Richie and Joy and their family built the buildings. The people that were with us when we started, we quickly gained others. People like Marilyn, 2 sets of Millers, Jim and Becky, and Dennis and Nancy, and the Basemans and the Cernickies, and a whole bunch of other people started coming. And quickly there was a building full, just jammed with people worshiping, learning, growing, and it was really exciting. I think what I would say about this season is that God was preparing us to prepare another generation.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking.
Both as a family and as a
Yes.
church. There were a couple really exciting things during that phase that were really happening. I mean, personally, our kids were growing up.
Yeah.
And that was a season that they began to find their life partners and eventually get married.
Yes.
So we had all 4 of our children got married in a span of 2 years. 2 got married in 1 year, took a break. The next summer, 2 more got married. And it was very busy for us personally. But I remember thinking about that because there was a 5-year period in that phase where our church performed 72 weddings. And it wasn't just me, but it was other ministers and people. But
somebody was always going to a wedding. Like,
every
what are you doing
weekend,
this
what are
weekend?
you doing? Yeah.
We're going to a wedding.
Yeah, everybody, so many people getting married. And it was such a beautiful time.
Yeah.
So in our lives during that period of time, it was busy, crazy busy. Like I mentioned, 4 weddings in 2 years. And, anyone who's been through that phase of watching your kids grow up, get married, and go on to another phase of life knows what that is like. And it's a big emotional change because your role, your purpose, your life mission changes.
Mm-hmm.
And you're still parents, but you're just on a whole different level. Now, like I felt like we lost our children and gained our best friends. And that was that's an easy thing to say, but it's a big thing to do. And so I felt like that was happening in our family. And then, I don't think it was that much different from what was happening in the church because we had all kinds of leaders that were feeling called. I don't know how many weeks in a row somebody would come up to me and say, "Hey, Pastor, I need to talk to you." Oh, okay. And I could tell already what they were going to say. They're saying, I really feel like God may want me to do ministry.
Yeah.
And I don't know what I'm going to do with that. And there were so many people that did that during that time. So I felt like what we were doing as a family got sort of paralleled by what God was doing with the church.
Right.
It was also a time where I think we saw some of our leaders and staff begin to change.
Yes.
A real profound moment to us, and certainly true today, borne out today, was we were having these early morning prayer times, or even before that, and we had a volunteer youth leader at the time who was doing a great job.
Yeah.
And everyone loved him. And he called up one day and said, "Hey," it was a morning in church. And Rand took the call and I talked to him and he said, I'm not going to be able to do youth anymore. There was a lot happening in his life personally and in other things. Yeah. And I thought, oh, okay. So like how long before you're not going to be able to do it? He said, right now, this Sunday, I won't be able to do it. And it just struck me and Rand, and we're like, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
We don't have anybody to take this over. He was great. And we no more than we're sitting there talking about it, the church phone rings. I answer the phone, and it's Aaron, my son, calling from Bible college. And he said, "Hey, Dad, what are you doing?" I think, I don't know. What do you mean, what am I doing? He said, "Well, what are you doing with the church and ministry?" And I said, "Well, just same old," and didn't really want to say because I was in shock about what we're going to do with the youth. And of course, he didn't know it because it just happened 10 minutes before. And he said, "Well, the reason I'm calling is we've been praying at Bible college every morning at like 4:30, getting up to pray." And he said, every time in prayer, I just see myself coming back to Mauston and helping you with church and youth and anything that needs to happen there. And I realized that was God. And then I realized when I hung up the phone that it was going to be more than that. I could just see myself getting older and the generations begin to change at the church. And then I had this little panic moment in my mind thinking, well, I'm still here. I can still do this. And I felt like God answered that thought with this one. If you wait until you can't do it, there will be no one here to take over. And so that second to the youth thing that they have no church really struck me to say, we need to prepare our church for another generation of leadership.
Right.
A new
Well,
generation.
and during that time, I was leading worship, and Josiah was leading worship with me, and Aaron was, our whole family was helping
And
with
lots
it.
of others too.
And lots of other people too. But I remember Josiah feeling a call to be a worship leader, and he wanted to go away to Bible school to learn more, to Hillsong Bible School to learn about worship. And we had talked briefly before he went there that, what if I go to school and came back and led the worship here? And I was thinking, oh my gosh, that would be so amazing. It's so like you were feeling God leading us to like the next generation, like we need to be mentoring people for the next generation to take over. And so he did that. He went away to Australia to Hillsong Bible College and came back an amazing leader. And it was shortly after that I stepped down and gave the ministry to him, the worship ministry. So that was really fun.
So that phase of church and ministry was also, yes, it was about preparing another generation, but it was also gathering leaders. During that time, we saw Jordan Baseman and preached his first sermon at 14 years old. Not just Jordan, but we had Jason, we had Tony, we had Isaac, we had Greg Bernacki, and so many others that felt called into some kind of ministry. We started an internship program, which really was more of just an organic mentoring program to help people prepare. That whole new generation was challenging us to be a little more real with them and not insist that they become like we were. And probably in a sentence, what I felt like God was challenging our church with was, it's okay to change your methods. But one of the convictions I had was we need to make sure that they keep the right message. And I remember being in the sanctuary, that little building. We had a little sound booth in the corner, and I was standing in the sound booth as before one of the services was starting, and I noticed a whole row full of like teenagers were coming to church. Well, normally teenagers don't come to church without parents, but there were no parents. For whatever reason, it struck me as being kind of odd, like, oh, that's interesting. And as that happened, I felt like the Holy Spirit just really spoke to me and said, these people, this generation has no church, but you can be their church. And that really was a pivotal moment as well, when we realized that this church just can't be about our generation.
Right.
They have no church. We have to make a way for them to have a church that they can feel is theirs, but also one where we can pass on the truth of the gospel and true Christian values to another generation. And that was also really important. And then it was not too long after we were in that first building, and this is really also a pivotal moment, that we felt like, it wasn't just me, but some of our others, like, we need to be prepared to build again. And I thought, oh boy. And so a lot of people were talking about it, and we felt like we should pray about it. So I prayed about it. And I thought, God, should we really build again? And I felt like, yeah, we probably should. And then I thought, what will I tell people? I just got them to build this building. What will I tell them about why they should build another one? And it was really one of those prayers of just kind of a reflection and half complaint. But I felt like God answered, and it became a real important sort of a mantra. And it was, tell the people that what they're now enjoying, others are yet awaiting. Yes. And that's really true. And it's always true.
Yes.
The Jesus and the experience we're enjoying, others are yet awaiting. So we're not building for us. We're not ministering for us. We're doing it for those who haven't yet discovered it.